Aloha, welcome back to Aina Bear Farm. We're going to do an update video on our garden on a slope here and kind of walk through some of our successes and our failures to this point. And so one new thing since the last video is our pig fence. And so we put in just some really simple wire garden fence material. This alone is definitely not enough to stop the wild pigs. And so we're also in the process of putting in some different kinds of plants around the barrier of the fence to just kind of further secure it. And we'll see how that goes. If I need to, at some point, I can come and put more stakes to support the fence along the way, just to keep it from bending and moving, keep the pigs from basically going underneath it. So far, it's been okay. Lucky the farm cat has been able to get in and out, but she doesn't do too much damage. We also have a some makeshift gates at this point. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know how much I like to just throw together junk pieces of projects from things that are laying around. So this is all just from wood that was laying around. Even I couldn't find any nails, but I had these the little U-nail like hanger nails. So I drove some of those in here with some of the extra wire. I did have to buy like your kind of park fence gate kit for the hinges and the open and close clasp. And then, you know, this is something, if the pigs ever figure this out, we're in trouble. But I don't think that's going to happen. But for now, this is going to work okay. So we'll come on in and take a look at some of the other stuff we've got going on inside the garden here. One of the things I wanted to share that is definitely, I don't know, I mean, you could call it a failure because it was something that I definitely did not intend to happen, but we're working with it and it's really not that big of a deal. But you may be able to kind of notice right now where the sun is reaching back there. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so we still have like fairly high sun. And this direction that I'm pointing is north. And so we have really tall trees uphill on the north side, those big podocarpus trees, which make a nice hedge. When I put this garden in, I was thinking, okay, I'm in the tropics, you know, I'm new to this whole gardening in the tropics thing. Sun's not going to angle that far down. So we're in the northern hemisphere here in Hawaii. We're getting close to the winter solstice, maybe a couple weeks away. So we're getting close to the lowest point of the year, but at this point, almost the entire garden is in shade for most of the day. We do still get a little bit of our easterly morning sun, and it kind of pops out a little bit from some of the big gaps in the shorter trees throughout the day, but we're in a lot of shade. And again, not the biggest deal because we have actually planned on doing some serious topping to those plants anyways. They're pretty big, they're a little bit close to the house. The neighbor doesn't like them because they block the ocean views from down the hill. And so, you know, not a complete failure, but definitely something I did not anticipate when I was designing, laying out this garden. And so we've had to kind of roll with that and make some changes. So we'll walk down this way and just kind of talk as we go about a few things that we've got growing here. We'll start with this row here. So here, spaced here and there, I've put in some sun hemp, some crotalaria. So that's what this stuff is here. Same stuff we've had in the food forest, the pasture we're converting to food forest. If you haven't seen that video, check that out. You'll see where we've cast the crotalaria seeds around that way. As we head down, you'll start to see where our crops are interplanted with the crotalaria. Kale being on that downslope side, interspersed with that sun hemp, and then the cabbage on the uphill side. So the idea is kind of multi-part. One is that things that would normally chomp on the kale might be somewhat interested in the chopping on the crotalaria. It's just sort of extra plant material around. to discourage them from chomping on my crops. Because, for example, right here, if this cabbage is the only crop in this row, I would expect insects to chomp on it. There's nothing else to eat here. But if we put in a couple other things that, you know, they might like to eat, it's just extra vegetation. But the bigger purpose here is these are nitrogen fixers. So they're pumping nitrogen into the soil. They also put out beautiful flowers that help pollinators. And so we will let, you know, at least one plant in each spot get a little bit bigger, put on some flowers. And then we'll probably do chop and drop at some point to kind of let the crops come up in between, and then we'll feed the crops with the crotalaria. And so that's the idea there. It works pretty good when you're first starting out new little seedlings, because the crotalaria grows pretty fast. To this side, we've got our sweet potato, a couple different varieties. This is like the Okinawan sweet potato, is really popular in Hawaii. And then this is like a little bit more of a standard variety. It's like a garnet sweet potato, something close to that. As we head down, we've got Moringa. And so I love having this in the garden for a few reasons. One is that I sort of treat it like a garden vegetable. The plan is to, as it gets a little bigger and a little more productive, you know, just come and hack off branches, throw this stuff in smoothies maybe. I mean, it's got a pretty powerful mustardy taste, so we'll see if we can cover it up in smoothies. But also in stir fries with rice, lentils, stuff like that. So really, really healthy, good food. And it's very, very productive once it gets going. Behind that is our compost pile. So we've taken some of the extra the roots and the grasses from when we dug all this up in the first place that didn't really fit as a use for mulch as we did in all the other places. Piled it up, put some food scraps in there. We're letting that break down right now. Let's see, we'll head down. We'll go across and check on a couple other updates here. Got more sweet potato, more moringa on this side. As we get further up, you can see our green onions doing pretty well. And then pineapples. These are all started just from the heads of pineapples that we bought. They're doing pretty good. I mean, they're gonna, I think, very much slow down being in this much shade. My concern is that the roots may start to rot a little bit, being in the shade all the time. We're also heading into our wet season, so lots of shade coinciding with lots of rain might not be the best thing for them, but we'll see. I'm hoping, you know, we'll hit the solstice a couple weeks later, the sun will start moving back, and then we'll be good. But as we go uphill, a couple other things I wanted to take a look at. Here's a spot where we are working with our quote failure of being in the shade. So this bed is in perpetual shade, therefore I'm not really too concerned about using it year round. So it's a good time for it to take a break, recharge it a little bit. So we've dug it out, big trench in the middle obviously. These two end spots here we've already come and filled in with food scraps. So underneath this dirt is our kitchen scraps, and we're just going to dump kitchen scraps all the way down, close it up just like that, and let that compost break down in place. Then, you know, maybe a month and a half from now, 2 months, when we get the sun back in this spot, we'll probably come in and plant some squashes and things, and they're going to love that like super dense, rich compost that's already built right into the soil. Behind me we've got some pigeon pea, so this is kind of a cover crop, nitrogen fixer as well. Also giving the insects something to eat that's not my crops, so that's always good. You can see this sad Mexican sunflower. I think just an example of being in perpetual shade, and clearly it's not too happy about that. Still putting on a couple little flowers though. We'll head down here, show a couple other things. The nasturtium, this is the only one that has survived, and it's loving the shade, so who knows. We also have our lucina. on the top. Remember, this is kind of our buffer row up here of like supporting plants. And the Leucaena is doing okay, but definitely not a shade-loving plant. It likes the hot, dry sun, and so we'll see how well they do. As we head a little further down, we've finally come across some asparagus, so we put some in there. Still trying to get some to go from seed. Haven't had a lot of luck with that. I think just not having quality seed right now. But we've got 4 plants just to get some going. And again, working with that shade issue, being in the shade, dappled sunlight was actually a pretty good time to transplant asparagus. So that's, I think, is to the benefit of having put the asparagus in at this time. So we'll see. As we move down, a couple other things on this buffer row back here. We've got our comfrey, and it's doing pretty good. And definitely, you can tell it's getting its roots established, starting to pump out a lot of vegetative material. When we get the sun back, I think it's just going to explode, and we'll have lots of chop and drop material. Another thing I wanted to talk about, which you may have noticed already, but there's there's quite a few different things that are growing in our beds that we obviously did not plant. One is this kind of ground cover plant, and I actually don't know exactly what it is, but I know just by looking at the leaf pattern that it's a nitrogen fixer. When I pull out the roots, you can definitely see those little nodules, those little bacterial colonies that fix the nitrogen. And so when I have stuff like this growing, I tend to just kind of let it go. It's definitely a soil helper. I'm not trying to get major productivity out of this bed at the moment, so this is not really a huge concern for me. On the plus side as well, these are these big chunks of grass. Oh, look at that worm. He was super happy under there. Big chunks of grass that we had dug up and flipped over when we originally made these beds, and they are breaking down much faster than I thought they would. And what we're ending up with is a much more organically rich soil than what we had before. If you haven't seen any of our early videos when we were first cutting these beds, or or you can go back and check them out just to compare, but this dirt it looked very sparse in terms of organic material. And obviously when we flip something over and we see a worm digging around, that's really good news. And so this stuff is breaking down a lot faster than I thought it would. Everybody told me, stuff breaks down really quickly in the tropics, and this is the first example that I'm seeing of that. So we're making some pretty good, much healthier, there's another worm, much healthier soil than I was anticipating at a much faster rate. So that's pretty exciting. On the flip side, since the rainy season has begun, everything is coming out, including grasses like this stuff. This is the stuff that was here before, when we had the lawn and we flipped that over. And I talked about in some of my previous videos that some of that grass might survive. What we try to do is flip it upside down so that the sun would get exposed to the roots. But I knew some of this grass is just so hardy that it wasn't going to kill it. So the plan was, I'll just come back and pull it out later. And as you can see, really not a huge ordeal for me to do this type of weeding. And I may be leaving some parts of those roots in there and have to come back and hit it again, but not too big of a deal. And these are all big chunks of that dead grass that we flipped over. Again, tons of organic material. Now that there's no chance of most of that stuff really coming back, we can just break it down, and then we're ending up with some really nice fluffy organic soil. So I was really thinking 2 years out before we'd be in high gear production in this garden. We're really just sort of trialing some things, seeing how different things grow at this point, but I'm really liking what I'm seeing, so maybe we'll be able to speed up that time a little bit faster. All right, last couple of things. We've got a couple long squash that are hanging on out here. So I'll step over here. these were definitely doing very well until the sun went away. Squash are definitely sun loving, but that's okay. We got quite a few. I think we've had 2 to eat so far. We've got this nice big one, a couple little ones. Those do really well here, which I was told, and I was really happy with how they did. So we'll definitely be doing those again, you know, when the sun comes back. And the last thing is the eggplant, which I've also been told does really well here. And as you can see, it's definitely thriving. We've taken one good size eggplant off this one already. We've got other fruits coming in. Plants are looking very healthy. Now this is no fertilizer at all on these. Most of them have fruits already on them. No fertilizer, other than, you know, what is already there and they're feeding on, and they're super happy and doing really well. Behind me, we did a row of carrots. They sparsely germinated, definitely mixed in with a lot of this stuff, which again, nitrogen fixer. It's a good weed, but when it's mixed in with the carrots, it makes it a little bit hard to thin those out and then give the carrots space to grow. So we're pretty sparse with our germination on those carrots, and that's okay. We'll come back and probably reseed at some point. And then in the meantime, we will get a few carrots here and there. And then finally, just the last few things that we're putting in the near future, we'll be putting in our lettuces, adding some more kale, throwing in some basil, and the bottom kind of triangle part of our garden, we've got one more row to cut. So we'll have 6 big rows, which means 12 of the small rows on this side. And then we'll have a big triangular space at the bottom that will be open, where we'll be putting kalo or kale. Kalo or taro. Got him a kick. And the taro likes a really nice, dense organic matter wet spot. So by being down at the bottom of the hill, we'll burn that up. Just throw tons of organic material in to put the kalo in. And then again, if you haven't seen our previous videos, these paths are on contour, so they're not straight. They follow the hill. The garden itself is a more or less straight rectangle, but the paths are on contour, so they kind of shift and meander a little bit. So you could definitely, when you're out here, sometimes it looks a little bit funny, but when you're working out here and you're moving around on it, it's really great because the paths are level. The water soaks in, we don't have erosion problems, so we're kind of working with the land, not against it. So that's where we're at the moment. Thank you for checking out our update, and stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because we'll have plenty more videos coming up in the future, and hopefully come spring we'll get most of our sun back and we'll have a lush kitchen / market garden growing out here to show you. All right, we'll see you next time at Ina Bear Farm.